I call this meeting of the Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. We appreciate your attendance at this board meeting. By attending meetings, you can learn about the accomplishments, needs, and concerns we face. The board meets regularly on the first Monday for committee of the whole meetings and second and fourth Mondays of each month for regular meetings. Open forum for the public is available only at regular meetings. All meetings are open to the public except closed and exempt sessions, which are permitted by certain sections of Iowa Code. All board decisions, however, are made in public open sessions. The board is not a forum, it is a deliberative body. Accordingly, it receives communications, both oral and written, as a medium of information. It does not debate the contents of such communications, but considers them in making decisions and in the establishment of policies. During each regular board meeting, there is an opportunity to address the board by completing an open forum request and giving it to the board secretary prior to the meeting. Each person may have up to 2 minutes of time to speak. This is a time of listening by the board, so the board does not make any comments during open forum. The issue will usually be referred to the administration for further study and follow-up if necessary. When the board president recognizes you, direct your comments to the entire board and limit your remarks to 2 minutes unless extra time has been approved by the board president prior to the meeting. The school board president will recognize one speaker at a time and will rule out of order other speakers who are not recognized. Only those speakers recognized by the chair will be allowed to speak. Comments by others are out of order. The school board president shall promptly rule out of order any discussion by any person, including school board members, that would violate the provisions of state or federal law, our open forum policy, or the statutory rights of privacy of an individual. To ensure that the board can conduct the important business of the district, the following guidelines apply to all members of the public who attend board meetings. The board asks that all members of the public treat open forum speakers, district employees, and the board with respect. Individuals are not permitted to engage in conduct that interferes with the ability of other individuals to watch the board meetings, interferes with the ability of other members of the public to offer comment to the board, or interferes with the ability of the board to conduct its business. Demonstrations during public comments, such as clapping or cheering in response to either public comments or statements made by board members, is discouraged. Those wishing to display placards, signs, and/or banners may not block any attendee's view of the proceedings. Director Hayes, would you please read our board priorities?
Yes, I'll be happy to. The Davenport School Board establishes the following priorities to ensure the academic success of all students, provides leadership and direction to improve the overall learning environment in our classrooms, schools, and districts, including the health, safety, security, and happiness of students and staff, and to direct and support actions, programs, and activities which reduce the impact of poverty on our students, their families, and our community.
Thank you. And Director Potts, would you please read our mission and vision statements?
Mission statement. Mission statement. To enhance each student's ability by providing a quality education enriched by our diverse community. The vision statement. Education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you very much. Interim Superintendent Schneckloth, are there any student board reports?
Yes, and Carson's going to get us started.
On the 19th, a few engineering students and their teachers headed to Des Moines to promote STEM education at the Capitol. West students presented their Clean Water for Kenya project to show the impact that STEM education can have. Over this past weekend, the jazz band and show choir took a trip together to Southeast Polk. The jazz band earned 3 Outstanding Soloist Awards, and the show choir performed great in their final competition of the season. Lastly, on Saturday, both of West's robotics teams, the Combustible Lemons and the Mortal Combats, competed at the Iowa State FTC competition. The Combustible Lemons did not advance, but the Combats won the Think Award for the best notebook in the state and took home second place for the Inspire Award, which is the combined score for all parts of the competition. This means that the Combats advanced to the FTC World Championships in Detroit on April 24th through April 27th.
On February 16th, Manny McGowan placed 5th place in the heavyweight class at the state wrestling tournament. The boys basketball team won their game in the second round of sub-state, and they will play their next game tomorrow against Iowa City West at Muscatine. On Monday, February 18th, several of our government students met at Central and then headed to Des Moines as part of the Get on the Bus program. While in Des Moines, students toured government buildings, including the Capitol building, where they met many different elected officials, and senior Eli Wallace was named to the all-district academic basketball team.
The Central Show Choirs had an incredibly strong finish this past weekend at Western Dubuque. Blue Vibrations finished first place in the prep division for the third time this year. Blue Vibrations also ended the year with 3 grand championships and 1 first runner-up award. Central Singers was named first place in Class 4A and won caption awards for Best Band and Most Creative Show. CSI finished the year with 1 first place finish in Class 4A, 2 second place finishes, and 1 grand championship. 2 Central seniors have received MVP scholarships, which will cover the full cost of tuition at Iowa State University. And last but not least, Central's robotics team won their super regional competition and finished 11th in the state competition this past weekend.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any board reports? Director Hayes.
Today I attended the State of the City address at the Rhythm Casino. It was nice to hear the collaboration that the district was mentioned several times by Mayor Klipsch for the efforts that we're doing together. And it was really nice for the entire program to start off with basically like a community choir from all the high schools. It was a combined choir that sang the national anthem. It was just nice to see the collaboration of the city, the district, even the entire Quad Cities pretty much just woven together for our community, everyone in conjunction, helping each other.
Thank you. Director DeSalvo.
So as Natalie mentioned, a week ago today, we took 2 buses of students up to the Capitol, and I have a ton of people I need to thank that made that day such a huge success. So every year we do this trip. We do it on President's Day. So the students are not in school, and they do this on their own time, as well as the staff that goes with us. So kudos to those kids that get out of bed. We boarded those buses at 6:45, and we were on the road. And we almost didn't go because of weather, so it was kind of there. But I have a lot of people to thank that made our annual trip possible. Over 40 high school students traveled to the Capitol on their day off. City Council members Mike Manson and Rich Kluhl donated to cover the cost of the buses for us. Traveling on their day off to help us from our staff were Dan Flaherty from Central High School, Bob Tollefson from North High School, Joe Whitmore, and Alex Schlew from West High School. Special thanks to our local legislators who joined us and spent time visiting with the students and answering their questions. That was Cindy Winkler, Monica Kurth, Chris Knoyer, Robbie Smith, and Jim Lycum. The Urban Education Network continues to support us in so many ways. They hosted us all day. They greeted us when we arrived and visited with the students about the legislative processes. They sponsored lunch for us, which was a pizza buffet that was very much appreciated and really enjoyed. Very special thanks to Margaret Buckton and Lou Finch for their continued generosity and support. Also, a very special thanks to Governor Reynolds and Lieutenant Governor Gregg for taking time out of their very busy days to spend time with the students. As you can see in the pictures here, this is in the governor's office, so she lets all the kids come in. She took selfies. I know her office, they called me right away and said, hey, we sent the selfies over to the Quad City Times, although I didn't see any of them printed, and I'd like to get my hands on them. If you have them, I would like to see them, Megan, because It was hilarious. There's the governor taking selfies with our students, and she took a ton of them. So really, really proud of our students. I'll talk about that a little bit more. Well, that's me taking a picture of them, taking a picture of the selfie. So it's just not the same. They were so cool. But let's see. Thanks to board member Bruce Potts for joining us on the trip. He was on one bus, I was on the other, and he kept us all corralled all during the day. So thank you, Director Potts, for joining us. I cannot thank Mary Carruthers and Rachel Steiner enough for all that they did to make the trip a huge success. Mary did all the planning and coordinating. Rachel traveled with us, kept us on track, and took a lot of great pictures. So I know Rachel has a lot of good pictures too. Thank you both for all that you do for us, for me, for our district. You truly are amazing, and I could not survive without all your help and constant support. Hugs to you both. I will say I was writing this while I was watching the Academy Awards last night, so I kind of got some hints from them. Thank you. I'm just kidding. Special thanks to Interim Superintendent Schnuckloff for spending his day with us too. He took his day off work to be with us and the kids. Your continued support of our students and staff are really, truly inspiring. And lastly, thanks to the students for spending their day off with us on this trip. You made us all very proud in how you conducted yourself. They were prepared. They had great questions and discussion with our legislators. Many of the legislators came up to me afterward and said, wow, that was a great group of students. They were very impressive. Their questions were spot on. Really, really good discussion. So I could not have been more proud of how they conducted themselves. It truly is an honor to be there with them all. Our students are amazing. Our district is amazing, and you continue to make us all very proud. So I just love being a part of that. That's one of my favorite things to do because it's a really, really inspiring day, and we had a great time. So thanks to everybody that made that possible. Thanks for the Academy Award. I'm not kidding. I was typing out loud.
Thank you for that. Are there any other board reports? All right, communications. Oh, before we get going on that, I have to apologize. I forgot to mention the two board members that you don't see up here at the board table. One is Director Gosa, and is he he is on the phone? Okay, thank you. So Director Gosa is in Kansas right now, and he's participating by phone, and we have determined that that is appropriate for board members to participate by phone. Our other board member, Director Mayfield, is not able to attend tonight either in person or by phone because of some personal issues. So I apologize for not mentioning that earlier. Communications, Director DeSalvo, would you please read our upcoming events?
Sure. March 4th, Monday, 5:30, Committee of the Whole meeting in the Achievement Service Center at 1702 Main Street in Davenport. March 6th, Wednesday at 3:30, there will be a Policy Committee meeting in the Executive Boardroom at the Achievement Service Center, 1702 Main Street, Davenport. March 11th, Monday, 6 p.m., regular meeting in the Jim Hester Boardroom in the Achievement Service Center at 1702 Main Street, Davenport. March 12th, Tuesday, School Budget Review Committee, SBRC hearing in Des Moines. March 25th, Monday at 6 p.m., regular meeting, Jim Hester Boardroom, Achievement Service Center, 1702 Main Street, Davenport. April 1st, Monday, 5:30 p.m., Committee of the Whole meeting in the Jim Hester Boardroom at the Achievement Service Center, 1702 Main Street in Davenport. April 8th, Monday, 6 p.m., regular meeting, Jim Hester Boardroom in the Achievement Service Center, 1702 Main Street, Davenport. April 9th, Tuesday, 5:30 to 8 p.m. is the 12th annual Taste of the Pro Start event. Davenport River Center, 136 East 3rd Street, Davenport. I highly recommend going. The food is fantastic. April 22nd, Monday, 6 p.m., regular board meeting in the Jim Hester Boardroom, Achievement Service Center, 1702 Main Street, Davenport.
All right, thank you for that. I don't see any open forum requests. So I will just say that the board always looks forward to participation by our community, and we look forward to you coming to the board and speaking with us on important items. we do have a process, and if you're able to come and give us a request, get it to the board secretary prior to the open forum. We look forward to your participation. We'll move on to the consent agenda. May I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move that the board accept the consent agenda as written.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All right, we'll call for the vote. Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Potts,
Yes.
Director Beck,
Yes.
Director DeSalvo,
Yes.
Director Gosa,
Yes.
and my vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of bills?
Mr. President,
Director DeSalvo.
I move that the board approve the following recommendation by the administration for adoption of the bills from the bill listing periods of February 7th, 2019 through February 20th, 2019. Resolved, all claims presented to the board having been duly certified as correct by the secretary, reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims and warrants drawn on the treasury for the several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and salaries be approved as presented for the periods of February 7th, 2019 through February 20th, 2019.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay. Call for the vote. Director DeSalvo,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Gosa,
Yes.
Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Is there a superintendent report?
Not at this time.
Okay, we'll move on to other items requiring action. May I have a motion regarding approval to renew cooperative sharing agreement?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board approve the application for renewal of the cooperative sharing agreement in boys and girls swimming and girls and boys bowling with Assumption High School.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Beck.
As someone relatively new, what's the history behind having these types of agreements, and how many do we have?
You might have to get closer to the microphone.
What is the history behind this type of agreement, and how many do we have? And I would suspect somebody back there could answer.
Paul can come up. Paul, you need to come up to the microphone.
Well, this is an agreement we've had for several years now with Assumption High School. They have two activities that they do not offer their students, bowling and swimming. And so we have a cooperative, this is through the State Athletic Association, an agreement that we allow them to compete for us under our name. Students are supposed to attend the school in their attendance area, and for the most part that happens. There's been one time that I know of that it didn't, but it was for a good reason. So that's.
And so you said that they compete under Davenport name, so it's not.
We had students, we had one swimmer swimming for Central from Assumption, and he competed as a Central student.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions?
Anybody? All right. Thank you. I'll call for the vote. Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director Potts?
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding public hearing and approval of plans and specifications for the North High School Field House project?
Mr. President,
Director DeSalvo.
I move that the board approve the administration's recommendation to approve the plans and specifications for the North High School Field House project. President Johansson will conduct a public hearing on the project. I was just reading it.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
We will now hold a excuse me. We'll now hold a public hearing for the approval of plans and specifications for the North High School Field House project with a notice published in the Quad City Times on February 15th, 2019. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step forward to the microphone. State your name and address for the record. Seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. Is there any additional discussion on this matter? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion on the approval of plans and specifications for the Central Softball House remodel project?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I move that the board approve the plans and specifications for the Central Softball House remodel project as shown in the 95% plans and specifications.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
We will now hold a public hearing on the approval of plans and specifications for the Central Softball House remodel project with notice published in the Quad City Times on February 15th, 2019. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step forward to the microphone. State your name and address for the record. Seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. Is there any additional discussion on this matter? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion on the approval of plans and specifications for the West Corridor 2019 project?
Mr. President,
Director Potts.
I move the board approve the administration recommendation for the plans and specifications for the West Corridor 2019 project.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
We will now hold a public hearing on the approval of plans and specifications for the West Corridor 2019 project with notice published in the Quad City Times on February 15th, 2019. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step forward to the microphone. State your name and address for the record. Seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. Is there any additional discussion on this matter? Director Hayes.
Just for clarification, were the lockers that will be replaced, are those just lockers on the second floor?
Yes, the entire first floor has been completed in the past several years of the project. So the ones on the second floor are the only lockers remaining that are the original ones. So those will be replaced this summer.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any additional discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Beck,
Yes.
Director DeSalvo,
Yes.
Director Gosa,
Yes.
and my vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion on the approval of plans and specifications for the Central High LED lighting and controls project?
Mr. President,
Director was it DeSalvo?
Yes.
Director DeSalvo.
I move that the board approve the plans and specifications for the Central High LED lighting and controls project as shown in the 95% plans and specifications.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
We will now hold a public hearing on the approval of plans and specifications for the Central High LED lighting and controls project with a notice published in the Quad City Times on February 15th, 2019. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step forward to the microphone. State your name and address for the record. Seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. Is there any additional discussion on this matter? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director DeSalvo,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Gosa,
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of contract with MediaCom?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board approve the contract with MediaCom in the amount of $864,000.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director DeSalvo.
Okay, we were just handed, is this a different document than what was on our?
No, it's the same.
That's an updated document that Gary gave me before the meeting.
Okay.
So I'm assuming he's going to come up and explain the difference.
Yeah, because it looks like it's a little more than.
Hello. Yes, it was an omission on my part. I had that listed as coming from the PEPAL fund when it actually comes from our general fund.
Okay.
The good news is that we're saving almost $100,000 on the general fund with this updated contract while expanding our bandwidth capabilities.
Can you say that again? A little louder. Can you repeat that, please, a little bit louder? I couldn't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I really don't have a problem with that most times. I had suggested that the funding source for this was PEPAL, when in fact it was general fund money.
Okay.
The good news, though, is that the savings that we're going to get with this contract is almost $100,000, like $97,920. So that's going to the general fund. And we're, at the same time, we're also increasing our bandwidth by approximately between 2 and 5 times our current bandwidth. We're going up to a gigabyte transport through all of our district's buildings.
I'm sorry, I have another question.
Go ahead.
And this is just a renewal or adding on to existing?
This is, the end of our 3-year contract is in June 30th.
Okay.
And this was a new contract that's going against the next 3 years.
Okay.
This is a renewal and an upgrade at the same time.
Okay.
And that is also funded by E-rate. And so we're able to get 80% discount on the bandwidth that we buy. So we're only in for 20% of that. So it's a real good deal for us.
Thank you.
Director Beck.
So just to clarify then, what we are actually paying is $192,240 over the 3 years, correct?
Over 3 years, correct.
Okay.
Any other questions for Gary? So is the motion correct the way that it stands?
Yes, it is. Possibly some of the confusion there is When we applied through E-rate, I applied for both of these as a single contract, and what MediaCom supplied us was two separate contracts, one for the WAN connections and one for the internet service. So right now, we're talking about the WAN connection.
Okay, and then would the other contract be
Correct.
separate? And you'll bring that to us at some other time?
I misunderstood you, I'm sorry.
It's right underneath the
Okay,
807.
all right. Okay, all right, thank you. Director Beck.
This is like a bookkeeping thing. So the recommendation that we have on the table is for a contract for $864,000. Do we have to state that we're paying $192,000 or?
So actually, there are two contracts that were submitted by MediaCom. One is for the transport connections between our buildings, and that's a gigabyte each. And that comes to $864,000. And then the second one is for the internet services,
Right.
which comes to $97,200.
No, I mean, but if we're we're only paying $192,000 out of those two amounts,
Almost $1 million, correct?
So I guess my question is, the motion is for a contract for $864,000, even though we only pay a fraction of that. It's the contract that we vote on, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
The federal E-rate program subsidizes us for
Okay.
that bandwidth based on free and reduced lunch.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
Director Hayes.
I kind of see what Director Beck is referring to, but I guess for clarity, it's included in the first one, the 97,000, but we're going to vote separately on it on 8.07.
That's the way it came through, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? So Gary, almost every year we talk about this.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering where we are. You know, you talk about doubling bandwidth and all this stuff, and I'm wondering, how good are we? You say like we're behind, but we're ahead. I mean, what does this mean to the students and the staff and everybody that works here? How does this help?
Well, I kind of wish that there was a competition for this because we'd be coming in as grand national champions, that type of thing. We are really in a great position as far as our bandwidth is concerned. The wireless access that we have throughout the district, high density, the number of computers we have for our students. Davenport's really looking good on this front.
So are you less concerned about that? A few years ago, you said, well, here's the law of somebody, which is that we need to increase our bandwidth by a multiple of 2 every year to keep up, and we still aren't keeping up. I mean, where are we in that law?
Well, the good things about technology is that they do double things on a regular basis. 18 months is a standard doubling number that they use, and I think the law you referred to is Moore's Law. We've surpassed that at this point. The industry has moved far beyond that, and we're talking about artificial intelligence and that kind of speed now that's really incredible. As far as what we need to do our jobs, we have probably twice the capacity we need right now that we're actively using. In the last year, for example, I'll tell you that we never exceeded more than like 55% of our available bandwidth. But next year, they might come out with something that's really essential to us, and we're geared up for it, we're ready for it. I had the opportunity to apply for a 5-year contract. I could have spread this out over 5 years. My instincts told me that we're probably going to see enough change in the near future that a contract beyond 3 years might not be able to take advantage of that and might hold us to obligations that we could do a lot better on in 3 years. Would have been less work for me in 5 years, but it's the right thing to do for the district.
Student school board members, do you have any comments? I mean, how are we doing in this area? Computers, bandwidth, speed? You're dealing with it all the time. Can you comment on it? Sure, go ahead, Carson.
I'd say that the supply for the computers is really good. Like, each student has a Chromebook and everything, and there's computer labs at the schools. But sometimes the internet goes down a lot, and that can, like, a lot of the classes are Chromebook based, and when the internet's out, I can't really do anything, and it's just hard to function in the class. So obviously improving our internet success will help a lot.
Any other comments? Sure, go ahead, Natalie.
I know that in like some of our classrooms at Central, like the Wi-Fi is really good, and then sometimes it's really bad. And then there's some classrooms where it's like you don't even get anything. So it's kind of hard to work on anything when like the teachers like pull out your Chromebook and work on it. It's kind of hard to do it in those classes. But other than that, it's good.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think our biggest problem regarding Wi-Fi is reliability, because in some classrooms it'll just be great, and in other ones you can't get your Chromebook to work. Today in physics, we had a student turn on his mobile hotspot so everyone could connect their Chromebooks to his wireless internet so we could all get our work done. So it's just a reliability issue sometimes.
All right, thank you for your comments. All right, anything else? Okay, we'll call for the vote.
Wait.
Oh, excuse me, Director Beck.
Will this fix those problems?
I'm pretty sure I could spend a half hour up here telling you about yes, and the simple answer is this won't hurt that at all. I think the problems they're experiencing are not really related to internet, but that's the common answer.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll call for the vote. Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Potts?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
Director DeSalvo?
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion regarding approval of another contract with MediaCom?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board approve the contract with MediaCom in the amount of $97,200.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second?
Is there any discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director DeSalvo?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
Director Potts?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion regarding approval of the superintendent contract?
Mr. President,
Director DeSalvo.
I move, excuse me, that the board approve the contract for the new superintendent, Dr. Robert Kowalski, as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director DeSalvo.
I would just like to thank, we had six incredibly, well, did we interview 6 or 8? 6. 6 incredibly qualified candidates, and I would like to thank HYA and Ted Blasing for all of his work. We went through an extensive process. We started back in the fall with community groups, and we had online information that we looked at. We compiled over, I think it was 12 or 1,400 online surveys of people, the community telling us what they wanted. We went through an extensive 3 days when we had narrowed it down to 3 candidates. We met with the candidates met with, I would say, at least 100 people each day. It was quite the process, and I'm very pleased to partner with HYA, and I'm very excited for Dr. Kowalski to join us. So I'm very much in support of this.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Mr. President,
Director Gosa.
I just want to say I'm going to vote no on this because I think it's too generous for where we are in the district right now with budget cuts and everything else. But in doing so, I'm not saying that I do support the new superintendent. I just don't support the contract. And I'm going to say it for the second time. I support the superintendent. I just don't support the contract. And now for my third time, and the reason I'm doing this 3 times is because I don't want it to be misquoted or the wrong information out there. I do support the new superintendent. I just don't support the contract because I feel it's too generous where we are right now.
All right.
That's all I have.
Thank you for your comments. Any other discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director DeSalvo,
Yes.
Director Beck,
Yes, I want to make an enthusiastic yes vote for this. I'm really excited.
okay, thank you. Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Gosa,
No.
Director Potts.
Yes.
And my vote is yes, motion carries. Thank you. We'll move on to discussion items. Interim Superintendent Schneckloth, is there a special education update?
Thank you, Susan.
You bet. All right. So I'm going to take you first to this document, which you've seen several times. And this has to do with the individual citations and where we are in the process, knowing that April 23rd is the last possible date for us to hold the meetings on. So we have two appendixes. Remember, there's Appendix A that had 46 students in it, listed specifically, and then Appendix B that had the 2,866 citations. So we have moved in, as of January 31st, in Appendix A, we had completed 34 out of the 46 IEP meetings, which included reevaluations, which was at 73.91%. As of actually today, AEA, it took a little bit, but they got it pulled today. They have completed 37 of those 46, and we are at 80% currently, and are on track for getting those completed. Then on Appendix B, as of January 31st, we had completed 2,286 of the 2,866, so we were at 79%. And as of today, we've completed 2,463 of the 2,866. We are at 92.43%, and we are on track. In addition, as of today, after meeting with the special ed department for Davenport, Sandy and I, and then we also met with AEA, we are now doing weekly updates to make sure that we continue to be on track, just knowing we're getting closer to the deadline. So just wanted to let you know that. Then the other area that I always report on is the compensatory ed. So the number of students who've been identified. Last time there were 215 students. As of Friday, there are now 225 students. Out of those 2,463 citations or meetings, there are 225 students that have been determined owed compensatory ed. So we've been staying at around 9% all along. I mean, we continue to have the meetings and students keep getting identified, but we seem to stay in that same range. Then of those 225, 108 are currently receiving their compensatory ed. Students in need of a teacher, right now we're at 27 students. You know, that changes every week because we get students get a teacher assigned them, but then more students are identified, and so we're in that process. The declined is at, no, I can't hardly read that, 32, I think. Isn't that what that says? I should make it bigger. Anyway, 32, so 14%. The no-shows were at 4 students that have not shown, which is good. That's down. We had talked with some parents, and they were able to talk with their students about showing. No response after multiple attempts. So this is where we continue to try to attempt to try to contact families, and we just don't seem to get a response. And the attempts include phone calls, letters home, and some home visits, but we're still at 17 of those 225 we haven't been able to reach for some reason or get a response back. And then there are 37 students who are completely done with their compensatory ed. Their hours have been met, and that was as of Friday, that data. Any questions on that? Yes.
Oh, I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you for continuing to update us. And I like the fact that you're implementing weekly updates as we get closer.
Yeah.
And I think it'll help us all
Yeah.
rest a little easier.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I know you guys are putting in a lot of hard work and trying to make sure we're doing the right thing. So
Thank you. Yes. Any other questions or?
Of the 27 students still in need of teachers, are the teachers available, just needing
Yes.
to be met? Okay.
Yes, that issue was resolved when we contracted with AEA, so we're really fortunate. It's just a matter of getting a teacher assigned, and so, and then getting the plan in place. They have to schedule it, and that's when we consider it assigned, is when the teacher finally schedule it. I will say that there are a few students in that 27 that are actually out of state, and trying to connect with those out-of-state districts has not been easy, but we continue to do that. But that's just a few of them.
Thank you.
Any others? Okay. And then the other oops. What happened? I clicked out, sorry.
Now you did it.
I don't know what I did.
That's
You'll have to
okay.
take us to it. The other document on there is our pie chart that I share every time that has that compensatory ed data on it. It's just a nice picture of where things stand. Oops, sorry, guys. All
I
right.
think it's one of those PDFs that was there, Barry.
She's got to go back.
Well, we'll just go right back there. There we go. And
Susan, while we're waiting, will you
right
please
here,
clarify?
I'll do it this one.
Susan, while we're
Yep.
waiting, will you please clarify the difference between doing the meetings and then compensatory education and what's due
Absolutely.
by April 23rd?
Absolutely. So, as part of the corrective action plan, we have to have all meetings held by April 23rd and have decided or determined if compensatory ed is owed. We do not have to have all compensatory education done by April 23rd because there are some students who have just a matter of weeks of compensatory ed. But as I've shared before, we have some students who have been determined that they're owed some extensive hours of compensatory ed, which will take over the next couple of years.
Thank you, Susan. I'm sorry, I was pointing to the screen.
Yeah, we've got your slide back up. Did you want to explain it?
Okay. This is just our pie chart with the same compensatory ed data I just showed in the other chart, but it's just a nice visual of where we are.
Are you done with your
I
presentation?
am done with my
Are
presentation.
there more questions, comments? I've got a couple.
Okay.
So I know you feel pretty good about this. My concern, when I look at the history of all of this, is that in spite of whatever the department seems to feel, I don't have the same confidence that the State Board of Education is confident that we're going to make it. And so, do you have that confidence from the board or from the Department of Education? I know that Sandy has expressed that periodically, but I'm I just don't have that same confidence of the board. And that's why I'm wondering, is there any way to express a confidence that could get me confident that the state board is not going to come down? Because they even, at that one meeting, they, prior to the phase 2, they expressed, some of them expressed that they wanted conditional accreditation. And I thought, something's going on there. And so are we okay, Sandy?
The proof will be in the data. It doesn't matter as far as how anybody feels about it or what sort of confidence they have. In the end, it'll be the data either suggests that we did it or we didn't.
And I understand that, but it sure wasn't the sense in the past. And I have grown, what's the right word? Gun shy. Because it just feels like nothing we can do is going to be sufficient. I understand you say it's going to be in the data on April 23rd. And you've expressed confidence, and Amy has expressed confidence for months that we're going to make it. I want to try to keep having that sense of confidence.
And that's why we're going to be checking the data weekly, and we're going to be having data checks on Mondays with staff members, and then data checks on Tuesday with principals. Pending any thing that we can't forecast, we should be done before April 23rd.
Yes.
Now, we'll see, but I'm confident that that's going to happen. As far as how people feel about it, their confidence at the state board or any place else, I mean, we'll either get there or we won't. It'll be in the data.
But do they accept data, or do they just make a feeling based on whatever they feel in spite of the data?
They will accept the data because in the report, that is what the department has told you that you need to do to prove that the corrective action has been met. And so it's a very data-driven process, of which it was very transparent when they said this is what you must get done by this date. And if the data support that, then you've met their expectations.
And then all the systemic stuff, that's going to take generations and generations from what they express.
No, what we have
right?
to do is once we get these 2,000 plus students taken care of, then the systemic work is about making sure that we don't have 2,000 again next year and 2,000 again the following year. It's to fix the system so that these things don't happen in the future. That will take time. That can't be done by April 23rd, but we have to have some urgency in that work as well, because we don't want children to continue to be caught up in some of these things that the district has been struggling with. So we will continue to do professional development. This summer, we're going to be writing a lot of procedures. We may be coming to you with board policies that we would like you to consider and to adopt. We will need to bring in some experts to help us in certain areas. So there's a lot of work to be done on the system. The reason why there's not a specific timeline on that is because that does take time. And to force it on a particular timeline would perhaps cause us to not be as careful as we need to be and consider all of the things that we need to consider. But that should not take generations and generations. We can't afford to lose that many kids. So we're thinking in this year we did a lot of awareness training. Next year we'll be doing a lot of skill building training, but not only for special ed, but for general ed teachers as well. And so while we march on, there is some urgency in systemic work because kids can't wait for us to get it right.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other, Director DeSalvo?
I'm looking at projections, and you talked about data, so I'm looking at Appendix B, and it looks like I know we had some bumps in the month of January because of weather. We were awful and beyond our control, and February hasn't been much better either. But it looks like between January 31st and February 22nd, they were just shy of about 200. So my calculations are roughly that we're going to come right in April 23rd. So I'm guessing you have some sort of plan or projection.
So we've asked the teams to do some backwards mapping, and actually it looks like we should be done 2 weeks before the 23rd, which gives us a little leeway in there, a breathing room, should a parent not show and we need to schedule another meeting or something like that. But it's looking like we should have pretty much all of them, or pretty close, pretty much all of them done by 2 weeks beforehand.
Okay.
That's where we're looking.
All hands in, and Mother Nature behaving with us as well.
Yes.
Okay.
And then we're on top.
I would like, when we hit that magic number, an email to the board, like we're here.
You will
We made it.
probably hear the fireworks.
That's what I would like. That's what I exactly what I'm
We will
looking
let you
for.
know.
Thank you. I would
Yes.
appreciate that. Thank you.
So this is something we constantly have our hand on the pulse of. We're not going to let this drop. We are beginning to forecast the next issue that we'll run into. And the people in Susan's department and Sandy are alerting us to any kind of issue that would, like the snow days, just when they pop up. And that allows us to generate a backup plan just in case. And so just today we were looking at the data, reviewing it again, individual student case by case basis, and Susan and her department are beginning to look at, okay, this is a possible issue. If this snow day type issue gets in the way, then here's plan A, plan B, and plan, I don't know if there's a C, but I know there's an A and a B. And so this is something we're constantly have our hands on the pulse of this. The next big push that we will be making as a district is beginning to look at, and we're already moving in this direction with our systemic disproportionality issues. And so that's a much bigger discussion for right here. I don't want to get into that, but we are heading down that direction. And so those are the things that we talk about constantly. Again, we have a standing meeting every Tuesday. If Sandy sees something that needs to rise to my eyes, she gets on my calendar right away. But we'll be looking at this data tomorrow morning, and comprising those plans as well. So it's something we constantly are looking at.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just like to take a second to reinforce that, because the district administration has been very supportive of this work, and now that we're getting down to the wire, we've got all hands on deck. So,
Any other discussion? So, I think, Susan, when you said when we will get, we're projecting to be done 2 weeks before the 23rd, which would be around the 7th or 8th or 9th, which is about 5 weeks from now. And when I think of 5 weeks from now, it's a lot different than 2 weeks from the 23rd. And to me, 5 weeks is like nothing. And I'm going, man, I mean, that I don't have that sense of comfort. I think that you do. But when you look at it as 2 weeks from the 23rd, coming back, and I look at it as 5 weeks from today, going forward, are those the same to you? Is it okay if we look forward from now and you say 5 weeks from now, we're going to be done? That's it.
We are planning to have most of them done, and we should be done right within that timeline, yes. Right now, we haven't projected that it's going to take us up to the 23rd.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. And thank you, Sandy. Any other discussion? Okay, we'll move on. Next is section on board communication, and I want to open this. I just want to have a little bit of discussion amongst this. So I just want us to be really careful, because we end up having to communicate with all sorts of people all the time. And sometimes it's somebody in the grocery store, and sometimes it's emails, and sometimes it's texts, and all of this. And so I know that there have been times in the past where somebody would send an email request question, and it goes to the whole board. Who answers it? Sometimes nobody does, and then somebody feels compelled to answer it. I've seen that. The thing with emails, which now we've seen that sometimes intentionally or inadvertently, somebody will send a question to 2 or more board members that's the same question, but it isn't indicated that they're sending it to those board members. It's sent as individual. And so some of the things we've talked about, which, especially if it's I think in the area of special ed or something pretty controversial, I want us to have a sense of where we're going with those without putting restrictions on us. So I'd entertain any comments on this. Oh, come on. Somebody has to say something. Director Beck.
Well, I mean, I appreciate that we don't want to misinform, and we want to make sure that we send the correct information, and that everybody knows what's going on. So if I get an email, I'm not the expert in special education, for example, so my job is to forward that on to the person who is, and so it makes sense. But if I know the answer and it's a very short answer, when are these meetings, something like that, I'm going to respond, right? Like, when is the school board meeting? Oh, it's at 6 p.m. on this Monday, this Monday, and this Monday.
Right, something like that. But I think sometimes we get involved in things that are deeper than that. And that's where I'm trying to figure out. I think we all have to just figure, where are we in any of those questions? Some of them, and all of us have different expertise. You know, it might be a legislative issue, and who knows that better than Director DeSalvo? And she starts saying, well, we got to concentrate on this and this and this, and the board supports this. The district supports this. We need more SSA. I mean, there's just a lot of things. And I think somehow I want us to have that freedom to answer stuff without getting ourselves into trouble. But you're right, I think we have to answer things, but any comments? I guess I'm not doing a very good job of directing this conversation. Director Potts.
I think I understand the direction you're going or what you're talking about, and I think it's people get in trouble when they try to answer things for other people and they really don't know the answer. But you don't want to say, I don't know, so you tell them what you think, and that's and if it gets even more complex if you're dealing with somebody who's answer shopping. I want to get an answer from you. I don't like that one. I get an answer. I don't like that one. Oh, I like that answer. This is what the board said, and I don't know how you avoid that. It's difficult to avoid other people's less than positive motivations for querying you. But I think that basically we have to know what we don't know, and then we refer that person to who we think has the answer. And I think if we just use our own common sense, I think we'll be okay. That isn't to say somebody is going to trip us up.
Director Hayes.
Even going with a little further than that, I think a lot of people are confused about the board's role and responsibility. Some people see us as a board of one. However, we're a board of 7. No one person can make a decision for anything. It takes all 7 of us. However, a lot of our answers or a lot of our information, all of our information actually, is driven by administration. When we get those queries, it would probably work out best if we were to not even worry about them, just forward them to superintendent. He can fill them out. We, in our positions, we have no idea. Sometimes we do, but most often you have no idea who's the best person to answer that question. It could be a number of people, and you can possibly select the one that has the less knowledge about it. So I think to save, a lot of different answers, and as Director Potts says, the answer shopping, forward it to administration. and let them worry about those concerns. And as we had discussed earlier, thank you for your information. However, I have forwarded this to whoever is going to take. And that same thing goes with calls. I received a call Saturday night late, and I want to say it was probably 8 or 9 o'clock. I referred that information on to Superintendent Schneckloff, and, the person was kind of told to deal with this person. And already today, that's being taken care of, which has nothing to do with me or my answer, but they're getting they're taking care of the situation as best they can right now. So we're not in the schools. We have no idea what's going on in the school. You just have to feel that information from the person that you hear it from to the correct person and get that resolved rather than batting it around with the incorrect answer or whatever it is you think it might be, because that's not the case.
Thank you. Interim Superintendent Schneckloff.
In the defense of the board members and President Johansson, on November 1st, we didn't get a chance to do what a normal superintendent school board get to do, where you go into a workshop. You talk about this is how we're going to communicate with one another. And under the circumstances, I would applaud the school board for the questions that you've been asking. You were directed to do that, and you've done it. There's been it was a pretty turbulent time there for a while, and you guys were asking questions. You were holding people accountable, and I applaud you for that. The second thing I would applaud this school board for doing was joining IASB again. I notice in front of every single one of you there is a packet. There are books. And as we move forward into the next chapter with the new superintendent, it will be vital and critical to go into, and I know you already have that plan, President Johansson, to go into, what are the roles and how do we communicate. In your defense, we didn't get to do that, and we're working it out as we go along the way, and I appreciate it. And as we move forward, the things that you described, the one thing that we can promise as an administration is that when you send a question to us, we will respond, and we'll respond in a timely manner. When I think back to every problem that we've run into in this arena, we can usually find fault in ourselves for not providing timely communication, whether it be with a community member, a school, or with our school staff. So the communication can sometimes be at the start of it. So those two things, I applaud you for the accountability that you've displayed early on, and now you're starting to forward those questions on, which I highly applaud and I think is the absolute right thing to do, and I applaud you for joining IASB. Those resources are very valuable. It was a wise decision. Sorry, I know I'm not supposed to talk during the board, but that was really...
Any other discussion? Director DeSalvo.
I would just agree with the discussion that's taken place. We get a lot of emails and a lot of questions that come in, and often we need to get to the experts. And so in doing that, it's not like we're passing the buck to someone else. We're just trying to get a consistent and appropriate and correct answer. So we aren't the experts on all of it, but we're going to turn to those to do that. It's very difficult because you want to respond to everybody, you want to take care, you want to help, you want to get them answers. But I've learned that I'm not capable of getting the answers perhaps in every situation that is appropriate. So I'm going to turn to that. And I agree. I think the right thing for us to do is, thank the people for their questions, and we invite their questions and want to get the answers to them, and we will forward it on to administration. And I think that's the appropriate thing to do. One other thing I would just add is that I am one board member, and I believe Director Gosa mentioned that tonight too, that I'm just one board member. So we can't speak on behalf of this entire board. And so when we are communicating, it's not the board's feeling, and perhaps we don't always agree on those things. So that's another reason why it's so important just to say that, I'm not speaking on behalf of the board, I'm speaking on behalf of myself. This is my opinion, not the opinion of this entire board. So just wanted to add that.
Director Gosa, did you have anything you wanted to say about this?
I think everybody's pretty much said everything. I think nowadays the lines of communication between the board and the administration's a lot better than where it was, so I think it's a little better that way. The only thing sometimes I feel, and I brought this up numerous times, that we're getting blasted from stuff that's already been out there, and then we know nothing about it till hours later. And that's one thing I'd really like to see fixed. But otherwise, I agree with everything everybody had said.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion here? I wanted to open up a little bit different area, which is phones. So we get phone calls also, and occasionally texts. And I really thought about it after our last meeting. And I don't know whether everybody here uses their personal phone or whether we have district phones. Is it all personal? That's my sense, is that we're using personal phones. And so there may or may not be a real cost to it, depending on your plan. But the other thing is that it takes up a lot of time getting on the phone with somebody. And board members have a lot of conversations between themselves, with administration, sometimes with other staff, and it can take just fantastic amounts of time. And then getting onto a discussion or into a discussion with a community member about a specific issue can take a lot of time also. So I don't know if there are any answers. I've been contemplating perhaps doing something in the area of phones because, for instance, on my phone, I get enough calls that unless I recognize a phone number, I will not answer it. So do I have an obligation to answer every phone number I don't recognize because it could be a constituent? But it's more likely a salesperson. I mean, that's the kind of stuff. And then if somebody does not leave a message, I definitely will never recall that number. But I don't know how everybody treats phone messages. Director DeSalvo.
I would also say that on my personal cell phone, I'm at work. And so I'm not going to be able to answer that while I'm at work. And I can't, and I will not. So I like you, if they don't leave a voicemail message, I'm not going to call the number back, because more often than not it's somebody telling me I've won a trip somewhere and I truly haven't. But so that's difficult for those of us that do work that aren't able to answer those phones all the time. I don't mind returning a call when I can, but I'm not going to be available all the time.
Any other comments on this area? Okay, well, I guess we've had enough of that. It's already 7:30. Why don't we move on to the next discussion item of board goals? And Director Beck is going to lead that discussion.
Okay, so I didn't bring paper copies, and Mary's having trouble pulling it up, but really this is sort of an opening discussion. Oh, it looks like you guys may have gotten it. Okay, it's an opening discussion. Ralph came to me after the, November 14th meeting with the State Board of Education, and one of the things that he mentioned was goals, and I also realized, this is something that we don't really have. We have our mission statement, our vision statement, but what are we working on right now? And so in our old boardroom, we had sort of our data table up on the wall. We don't have that in here yet. What are we doing to make sure that we are staying on task and we're following through with the mission and the vision statement? And so in response to the state and the school budget review committee, but mostly the state audit. I drafted a few goals that I thought would be sort of helpful to guide us as a board in terms of how can we make sure that we're making the progress that we want to be making as a district, as a board. What can we ask for that will show high expectations for the district and that we can see progress being made. And of course, that means data. And so I drafted several goals, and actually some of these things have already been are kind of moot at this point. But the first one, and I also did a little bit of research sort of trying to back up why would this be a good goal for us at this point. And the idea is, and actually I found it in our handy dandy new handbooks, that goals are general statements that, if accomplished, will help you reach your vision. And so they talk about setting goals per year. Sometimes they're broader than that. So I anticipate that we will come up with some set of goals that we'll work with for the next year, and then we'll revisit after a year and see what do we need to keep working on, what do we want to work on now. So the first one I came up with was increasing the number of students reading at grade level at the end of third grade. And that was because we know from a lot of research that reading at grade level by the end of third grade is a strong indicator of future academic success. And so that's a number that we could ask, where are we now at the end of third grade, and where are we next year at the end of third grade, right? So something that we can track pretty easily. And it also it ties into our disproportionality issues and a lot of the the dropout prevention, all the initiatives that we really already have in place. The second one was reducing the proportion of African American students with referrals, removals, and/or suspensions relative to other students. So closing that gap, and that's something that we're already working on. We've had professional development in some of this, but it will take some time to figure out how to measure that and to look at progress. And I have a little note here that Associate Superintendent Schnaden was working on those metrics, I believe. The next one had to do with IEPs and special education services, reduce the number of errors and complaints related to implementation. We're actually already doing that. And I even had in here, the DCSD school board is receiving regular updates, but a platform for feedback and timeline had yet to be established when I wrote this draft. So obviously that's been done. Looking at implementing programs across buildings consistently, I had asked, I believe I talked to Interim Superintendent Schneckloth about this. Some schools use, for example, the Boys Town model, some use PBIS. For a while, we had some programs in one building and not in others. You know, how can we make sure that we're doing the best practices in all of our buildings so that all of our students benefit? Probably one of the most important ones, and this was recommended by the state, that we demonstrate fiscal responsibility in decision-making as we move toward a positive unspent balance. So that's the one that's kind of starred and highlighted probably, but needs some work for how do we measure that. And then a couple of others that I sort of just came up with off the top of my head. How do we measure whether we're making progress in culturally responsive teaching in the classroom? How do we identify students who need special education services in preschool and kindergarten before they get behind? And likewise, how do we identify struggling students more rapidly? For example, students who we might currently look for 10 absences. Would it be more beneficial to start intervention services after 5 absences or tardies? Something like that. So trying to come up with a set of 5-ish goals that we can put numbers with, that we can really measure progress, that have some relevance to our mission and vision in alleviating the effects of poverty and challenging our students and delivering a high quality education. So I wanted to bring those to you at Ralph's request, but also because I think as a board, it's one of the things that we should be doing that we haven't been doing at least since I've been on the board. And it may be, as I've thought about this, that we need to revisit our mission and vision statements as well and see if they still match with what we want to do, especially as we bring in a new superintendent. It might be a good time to sort of revisit what do we want to do as a board, where are we going, and how can we achieve that. So I have opened it up.
Well, yeah, why don't you go ahead and lead the discussion, then ask for input. and
So I guess I would ask, what are your thoughts on that, Director DeSalvo?
Well, thanks for all the work that you put into this. I think it's great. I think with our new superintendent, I know we're going to plan some workshops, and I think this would be a huge starting point for that, to work with him to determine, what are his goals? How do they sync up with where we're going as a district, as a board? So I think the timing is very good. And I think this could start those discussions with our new superintendent when we start those workshops. Not that I want to kick it down the road or push it off, but because I think it's great and I think we need to do it. I think it's been a long time coming, but I believe the opportunity would be very good to work together with him on that.
And I would agree that the timing is good now that we have somebody new coming in to sort of start off on the right foot with this. Anybody else have any thoughts? Director Hayes?
Again, thank you for your work in this. One thing that, well, they're all good. I like them all. But one thing that I would like to see with this.
Linda, can you speak up?
Is that better? I apologize.
Thank you.
With number 6 in correlation with number 1, third grade, and then number 6 is preschool, kindergarten. I feel that students, not only special education students, but all students, you can monitor those behaviors and what's going on and track them rather than waiting to third grade, because by the time they get to third grade, sometimes it's harder to fix it. So if we could start monitoring that early on, I think we would have better success.
And I think sort of implicit in the idea of tracking progress at the third grade level is that you have to start earlier, really targeting students and their reading skills. So that's certainly something to incorporate. I guess I would ask if you do have specific comments like that, if you wouldn't mind just kind of typing them out and sending me an email so I can add them in so that when we start with our new superintendent, we have a document that we've all sort of taken a look at. Anybody else? Director Johansson? President Johansson, excuse me.
So a few things. Thank you very much for putting this together. It's obvious you put quite a bit of time into it. And a couple of things. One is, and I'll have to go back and look at the original citations from April 23rd. I thought there was something in there about board establishing goals relative to that. Was there?
There was a note suggesting that the board establish fiscal responsibility as one of its goals. I do not remember seeing a list of goals or a suggestion that we establish a list of goals, but there may well have been, because I remember seeing that we include X as one of our goals.
Okay. I just want to make sure that if we have something to do on the 23rd that we do it.
Yep. And I'll go back and
okay,
reread
if you
it,
wouldn't
look for
mind.
that.
We looked at the history of goal setting by the board, and the last time we did it was some years back. And when we started down the track of establishing goals, it turned into establishing the priorities that we currently have. And we looked at the history a little bit further, and it had started and stopped several times. And part of the reason is that timing gets kind of goofy, where we'll say, well, we want to establish goals in August. But then in September, we have an election, and new board members go, what? How can you establish goals when I wasn't here? So that means we have to establish them after new board members have gotten on and have enough time to be able to think about what our goals. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm willing to bet that there's even something in this handbook from the IASB about how to deal with the fact that elections happen at a weird time. And not everybody will have been involved in necessarily the goal setting every time.
Right, right. And we also had challenges with, we would ask people to lead us through goal setting. And it was quite different from what you've done, which is given us a template and then said, what do you think? But trying to get 7 people together and go through goal setting is very, very difficult. So maybe this is a better approach, or if we read something in the ISB handbook, maybe there's something there. The other comment that I would make, whether this is the right number or not, I don't know, but most of them are focused on African Americans and special ed. And I was thinking, we really need goals. We have to have goals for everybody in the district. And so I think Director Hayes was kind of getting at that. And I think that the district can't be only focused on African American and special ed kids. And so somehow I'd like to, I'm just asking you to think. I don't want to think. I really
You would
don't.
like me to rephrase some of these. Now, remember, I wrote this first pass right after, some of our
I understand.
our citations. So that's why those are in the forefront.
Yeah.
But certainly, identifying students who need, or identifying struggling students more rapidly. That could be anybody, right? Look at absences, or look at students who maybe are behind on math skills, or that could be broadened to include everyone, right?
Clearly, but what I want to do is to be able to acknowledge those kids that are in the fast tracks too,
Yeah.
and to say we want to provide the best opportunity
Got
for
it.
every kid or whatever it is. So
Okay.
that's all I'm
That makes
saying.
sense, yeah.
And I'm not meaning to be negative in any way. I really, really, really appreciate this. I think it's moving us forward. And the timing, I don't know, but I'd like to, perhaps we can discuss this even next week.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
that's what I was going to
great.
suggest.
Okay, all right. That's all I want to comment on. Thank you.
Interim Superintendent Schneckloth.
Two things. Everything that you addressed in here is addressed in our comprehensive school improvement plan. So I would urge the board to, what you're describing is a continuum of services. What you're describing is a multi-tiered system of supports. That's what you want to see happen in our district, is that we have a robust multi-tiered system of supports. I would say that our goals were established by Dr. Tate's priorities. So in the past, the way that this worked, you guys set priorities for him, or the superintendent, and then from there, we made sure every person in our district knew what those were and were focused on them. So there's some potential to do some undoing of work. So there needs to be some alignment of the goals that you set. So kind of like a review of what we're currently working on, what the board has set us working on, whether or not you were sitting in that chair or not, just like you said. Because one of the things that you hear a lot about is our teaching and learning plan. We're pretty proud of that. It's at least the plan, and it's the heartbeat of our district. So I would urge the board to review the teaching and learning plan, see what's in there, and your goals might be even more broad. It might be, or specific, whatever best practice says to do. But then your goals will to ensure that everything that's happening, is everything that we say we're going to do inside of our teaching and learning plan, comprehensive school improvement plan, is happening. That's what you hold us accountable for. There used to be a thing on the wall, and schools are moving. And if not, why not, kind of a thing. The second thing is I urge us to go back and look at those things in the phase 1 and phase 2 audits. They're going to strengthen us immensely. Example. There inside IASB has a best practice for how you review financial reports. There's a best practice for that. So that's something that we're going to establish right away. And I know you guys have have been requesting that, and that's something that's going to happen immediately. And we've been making our best attempt at that with our 2 and 5 year plan and updating those kinds of things. So making those, because what's happening in the phase 2 audit are good things. They're good practices. You know, one of the things that we went through was how to create a district that has a multi-tiered system of support that the district can focus on. And so I think from there you will have much stronger goals that really do drive the system.
A question in response to that. Shoot, did I just lose my train of thought? Oh, you had asked for an action items list from the state with regarding the phase 2 audit. Have you gotten that yet?
We have gotten a couple of them, and we're beginning to work on them now.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts on goals, goal setting? Director Gosa? Director Potts?
I'm just listening and thinking. I mean, these are, as was pointed out, as I read through them, I believe these are things that we're actively working on already. And some of these we've been working on for a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just thinking out loud, you know, goals, I see goals as something that are almost timeless
Mm-hmm.
in what they call for or what their aspiration is. And I think when we go down this path, we need to keep that in mind, that we don't want a goal that is too narrowly framed so that it doesn't keep us moving in that direction. But that's all. I want to digest this stuff.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So my thought was, yes, we are already working on a lot of these things. How can we as a board make sure that what we say we want to be happening in the district is actually happening in the district? And I guess one of the things that speaks to that is the fact that we're already working on a lot of these things, and yet a lot of us don't know how that progress is going, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, and that brings the other part of it is that there has to be a measuring matrix connected to the goal,
Right.
so that you can determine if in fact you are making any progress. Because that old expression, you know, what gets observed gets measured, what gets measured gets done, you know, all those
Yeah.
cliches.
And that was the idea behind the first couple where we were looking at percentages, because those are things you can measure. We reduced by, and I looked at a couple of samples in other districts, and it's actually not that uncommon to have, say, you know, this year we want to target this issue. We're going to look at how much progress we make for all of our students on Y skill. And so, but I appreciate where you're saying you don't want to too narrowly focus them. And so I think that's why we have 7 people. And only one of us writes the draft, but the rest of us all get a say. President Johansson.
You know, one other thing I have to comment on is that I am not an educator. I'm just a guy. And I think about these, and one of them, over the years, my time on the board, I have come to believe that your number one goal is it. And that there are, you know, we have a lot of other things. If we had every student, in fact, you say increase, and I'd say the goal is to have all students reading at grade level at the end of 3rd grade, particularly students who identify as African American. But if we had all students reading at grade level at the end of 3rd grade, I think everything would be what's like utopia, right?
Yes, we would all be I don't know, pooping rainbows or something.
Right. So somehow, and I know maybe we aren't going to prioritize these goals. What?
Don't put that in the minutes.
But I really think that if there's a way, because sometimes I think our efforts get diluted a little bit because we got to do this, and the administration has to do everything. But, and like in my businesses, we always try to just focus on 3 goals and that's it. We know that we can't do more than that. And I don't know that that's right either, because this is a big organization. But if there were a way, all I want to do is express my personal bent that has to be fantastically important.
Fair enough. And I have learned being in education, assessment is essentially like assessment, assessing your courses, assessing are your students learning, assessing X, Y, or Z. And it's overwhelming when you look at the big picture, and that's why you got to set 3 things or 5 things that you focus on over a specific period of time. And if you still need to work on them, you set it over a specific period of time again, because if you start to look at all the things, it quickly becomes overwhelming and you end up going nowhere. And so hopefully when we come up with, a few things that we can all agree on that are measurable, and that match up with everyone's with the district's ideas and what we're already doing, we can focus, keep track of our progress, and keep being awesome.
I have one more comment.
Go ahead.
I feel kind of like you're a one-person policy committee in setting these goals, and I hope that doesn't thwart you in any way, because sometimes in policy committee, you can get ripped to shreds by the rest of us, and I don't mean for any of that to happen, but I really appreciate what you've done.
No, it's fine. I like writing stuff like this.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for leading that discussion. I'm going to try to keep moving forward. Are there any administrative reports?
There are none at this time.
Board requests, I have 1. What's that? Oh, I'm sorry, I have 3. Excuse me.
Actually, I do have one. Can I say something?
Sure, as an administrative report.
Sure. Julie left somebody out to thank for going to the state on Monday, and you should have saw. That's what you signed up for. Taking students up there, you were in your element. The students were very comfortable with you. You obviously knew the workings of that and were able to give a detailed description. We weaseled our way onto the floor, and our students got a picture in front of where all the action happens. And so you did an awesome job. Nobody calls when the grass is mowed, right? And so you did a great job, and that was a wonderful experience, and one I hope everybody gets to do. So nice job.
Thank you for those comments. 3 board requests. First is Director Gosa. Date of request is 2/25.
That's today.
2019. An agenda item. I'd like for the policy committee to take a look at the policy on weapons.
Okay.
Why are you requesting this information or agenda item? With the recent event with a weapon, I feel it is important to look at the policy and make changes if necessary. Is there a second?
Second.
When would you like this? As soon as possible. Second request is from Director Gosa, dated 2/25/2019, an agenda item. I'd like to see a presentation on Pete the Purple Bull, which is the anti-bullying program. Why are you requesting this information or agenda item? I think it's a great program that is done at some of the schools, and I would like the board to have more information about this program. Is there a second?
Second.
There's no indication of when, so I'll just put when possible. Third request is from Director Hayes, dated 2/25/19, an information request for action. Please fix, yes. Please fix the fan noise in the boardroom. It interferes with being able to hear. It runs constantly, ! That cannot be correct. Why are you requesting this information or agenda item? Can't hear because of the fan noise. Is there a second?
Second.
What? Huh? Why don't you say meeting's adjourned, the fan shuts off? You do know that. He's got the fan button back.
When would you like this action or agenda item? And it has yesterday crossed out, and the real answer is ASAP. Thank you very much. Okay, with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned.